Hey, what's up, guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is January 6th of 2026. So, based on breaking news and events, it appears that CIA headquarters located in CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland is going to hit the United States with a 1-2 punch on the 5th anniversary of the January 6th false flag attack on the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. back on January 6th of 2021. So in the event of a secondary attack on a U.S. Capitol on the date of January 6th of 2026, it would mark two such events in 6 years. So that's 26, which equates to letter Z in the English alphabet, which is an acronym for Zionism. And that is, in fact, the political motivation behind this impending attack that's specifically designed to spawn a second global biological pandemic and or trigger a second American Civil War in the United States. So essentially, this evening of January 6th of 2026, it could be the morning of January 7th of 2026, but this evening, this night, the CIA is going to stage a full-scale United States Armed Forces, active duty and or retired, decapitation strike targeting Washington, D.C. That's Plan A. This will be a surgical strike targeting Washington, D.C. and or the greater national capital region, specifically to assassinate or kidnap U.S. President Donald J. Trump. If you'll recall, 3 days ago, on the morning of January 3rd of 2026, the United States Armed Forces executed a so-called decapitation strike targeting Caracas, Venezuela, which resulted in the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. This was specifically designed to foreshadow and set the precedent for a redux attack by alleged active duty and or retired United States military forces in the United States against the Trump administration. So in the event of a second decapitation strike on the date of January 6th, it would mark two such events in 4 days. And number 24 equates the letter X in the English alphabet, which is the international symbol of death. So we have Zionism, Z and X, and this spells six or Zix. And this is the six-pointed star of the Israeli flag, because this impending attack, although it's going to be scapegoated onto active duty or retired U.S. military personnel, is going to be executed by the Israeli Mossad. Make no mistake about this. This is going to be an Israeli operation in Washington, D.C. on the night of January 6th, a coup d'etat, an overthrow, an assassination of a sitting U.S. president that's going to be orchestrated likely on the ground, or it's likely going to be coordinated by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and executed on the ground by the Israeli Mossad. Coincidentally, back on January 29th of 2025, the CIA staged what appears to be a blood sacrifice offered up to this impending attack when a U.S. Army Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter collided with American Airlines Flight 5342 over the Potomac River outside Washington, D.C. And this Black Hawk helicopter was executing what is being called a continuity of government exercise. This is what happens to the U.S. government post-assassination or death of the U.S. president. So this was apparently a dry run for the real thing, which is going to happen tonight on the 5th anniversary of the January 6th attack. Considering that the helicopter and the plane crashed in the Potomac River just outside of the White House of Washington, D.C., this impending attack on the evening of January 6th, this likely provided logistics cover for this. They could have placed chemicals, they could have placed drones, they could have placed any sort of equipment in the river and for this impending event that is slated to happen tonight on January 6th. And you'll recall back on January 6th of 2021, exactly 5 years ago today, the CIA staged this false flag. Agent provocateur-based storming attack targeting the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Of course, this was designed to foreshadow and set the precedent for this impending attack this evening, but it likely provided logistics cover. So the security apparatus that went into place in the aftermath of the January 6th attack, the scaffolding outside the security perimeter, all this likely provided the installation of weapons, biological or chemical weapons, arms, small arms, because they're going to basically march in Israeli Special Forces, Mossad, and then they're likely going to recover these weapons inside the grounds of the Capitol building and the White House in order to execute this impending attack. Coincidentally, I believe it was on December 26th, the CIA staged an assassination of two U.S. National Guard members. One of them is dead, one of them is still alive. The female was murdered. That's apparently a blood sacrifice up to this impending attack, which may be blamed on National Guard members who took weapons from an armory, or it could be active duty members from Camp Pendleton, or it could be retired like Vietnam veterans, or it could be a combination of all three. And so this attack on this alleged Al-Qaeda attack targeting National Guard troops in the park just adjacent to the White House back on December 26th, I believe, this likely also provided logistics cover for this impending attack on the evening of January 6th. And in order to foreshadow a special forces decapitation strike targeting the White House, the CIA, via their Hollywood minions, released a film back on June 28th of 2013 entitled White House Down, and then just a few months prior to that, on March 18th of 2013, they released a film entitled Olympus Has Fallen. And coincidentally, back on December 18th of 2025, just last year, Candace Owens began to spawn this narrative via social media and via YouTube that the persons related or responsible for Charlie Kirk's death may have colluded or infiltrated Fort Huachuca in Arizona. And this was specifically designed to link the Charlie Kirk assassination to a fort or to a U.S. military base, because in order to execute this attack, at least theoretically speaking, some active duty or retired United States Armed Forces are going to have to secure weapons and transportation, which in order to fly across the country and to commit this attack in Washington, D.C. That is specifically why the alleged Al-Qaeda member responsible for killing or ambushing two National Guard members in Washington, D.C. allegedly traveled across the country from Washington State to Washington, D.C. in order to commit this attack. This was designed to foreshadow and set the precedent for a redux attack that's going to be scapegoated on Americans. And that is specifically why the whole entire canceling, the fake canceling of Jimmy Kimmel on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he said that the person responsible for murdering Charlie Kirk was in fact a MAGA person, is because they plan on assassinating Trump with MAGA. So they're going to, this is Israeli Mossad, they're going to put on red hats, and they're going to put on America First, and they're basically going to say that Trump's base turned on him, and that's why they created this neo-Nazi group called The Base, because they plan on murdering Trump and taking out a sitting U.S. president via the Israeli Mossad, and then blaming Trump's base, The Base, and the United States Armed Forces, who are Trump's biggest supporters. So they're basically going to knock out the sitting U.S. president and then scapegoat his followers for his assassination. Very clever, very, very clever. And they've been working this angle for 5 years. That's why they created the January 6th Select Committee. That's why they released all this propaganda films about January 6th. That's why they have been incessantly stating that these protesters were violent. They had their agent provocateurs in there. They were, of course, given a tour the day before. I mean, we don't have to go into the details, but the video footage has come out, and these were all FBI or former FBI officials that were paid to be there and paid to vandalize the capital of the United States. So that is Plan A. Plan A is a full-scale decapitation strike targeting Washington, D.C., resulting in the assassination or kidnapping of Donald J. Trump. It's going to be executed by the Israeli Mossad and subsequently blamed on active duty and or retired military forces. Okay, if that plan is thwarted, then the CIA is going to go to Plan B. And Plan B is a similar attack, but this is going to be active duty or retired United States or neo-Nazi group or militia groups from the Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota area are going to basically seize, do a storming attack targeting Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, his what they call the governor's residence or the governor's mansion, located in St. Paul, Minnesota, on the evening of January 6th or the morning of January 7th of 2026. And in order to highlight Tim Walz on an international level, just prior to this event, he officially stated yesterday, January 5th of 2026, that he will not be running in next year's Minnesota gubernatorial race. And so in order to foreshadow domestic terrorists attacking the governor's White House or the governor's mansion or the governor's residence, the CIA staged on January 5th of 2026, just less than 48 hours ago, an alleged trans person named William DeFore allegedly took a hammer to the house of J.D. Vance in Cincinnati, Ohio. The suspect has subsequently been arrested. He's obviously a CIA operative that was instructed to do this, and this is designed to foreshadow and set the precedent for this attack that is going to result in J.D. Vance being sworn in as the 48th president, because this impending attack will likely result somehow in the arrest or death of Donald J. Trump. And the precedent was also set, and it was back on April 13th of 2025 when the CIA staged an arson attack targeting Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's governor's mansion in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This was subsequently scapegoated onto a CIA operative named Cody Allen Baumer, who was an anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian activist. And then again, back on October 6th of 2016, exactly 111 months from today, the CIA staged the delivery of a package with explosives to the governor's mansion of Texas Governor Greg Abbott in Austin, Texas. And so these three attacks targeting the residence or the governor's mansion of a governor or a sitting president or vice president, I should say, were designed to foreshadow and set the precedent for a redux attack. So the apparent target on the evening of January 6th, morning of January 7th, is apparently going to be Tim Walz. We know about this guy named Nick Shirley, the CIA operative, alleged journalist who suddenly got all this video footage and information about the Somali scandal, the fraud scandal, and this is all happening on Governor Tim Walz's watch. And so this was specifically designed to provide a timely motive for some sort of a revenge attack by militia groups, by active duty or retired United States Armed Forces personnel targeting Minnesota. So they previously tried to stage an attack targeting Somali daycares. They previously tried to stage an attack targeting the Minnesota State Capitol building in St. Paul, and now they're on Plan C of this particular narrative, where they plan to stage an attack targeting the governor's mansion in St. Paul. What's imperative to note about Plan A, targeting Washington, D.C., or Plan B, targeting St. Paul, Minnesota, is that it's going to be chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear in nature. It's most likely going to be claimed that these active duty or retired United States Armed Forces or militia members or neo-Nazis or domestic terrorists, that they weaponized a contagion, a biological contagion, and then attached it to some sort of an explosive device, and that because the CIA is desperately trying to start a second global biological pandemic, and who better to blame it on than white Americans for this impending attack, and that is precisely why the former head coach of the Green Bay Packers, which his name is slipping my mind, but he subsequently became head coach of the Dallas Cowboys for the last 5 years. He is a Wisconsin native, and he developed what was called a football laboratory, where he turned a barn into a football laboratory, and this was designed to foreshadow that one or more persons basically turning their ranch or their home into a laboratory in order to develop or weaponize some sort of contagion as pretext for a second global biological pandemic. And that is what is planned this evening of January 6th, the 5th anniversary of the false flag attack on the United States Capitol building, is some sort of redux attack. Obviously, in the event of a second attack on a capital such as St. Paul or Washington, D.C., obviously we've had 2 such events in 6 years, which of course equates to number 26, which equates to the letter Z in the English alphabet, which is an acronym for Zionism. Z is for Zionism. And so that is precisely why the CIA, that is the political motivation behind this impending attack. It's Zionism. It's politically speaking Zionism. And this is likely being coordinated via the Israeli Mossad at the behest of Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu, who should immediately be arrested for war crimes, for terrorism, and he is likely responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk, indirectly or directly, speaking in Orem, Utah, back on September 10th of 2025. And that is what they're going to say in the media in the aftermath of this attack in St. Paul or Washington, D.C., is that this attack, that Charlie Kirk was the impetus, was the cause, was the motivation for this impending attack, and that they blame Trump, who is friendly with Israel, friendly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who incidentally just hosted him at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, back on December 29th of 2025. And that they will claim that Trump's cozy relationship with the Jewish state, with Jews and with Israelis in general, is what caused these quote-unquote America First patriots to lash out and to attack and decapitate the United States presidency. So obviously, this is going to be executed, like I said a million times before, on the ground by the Israeli Mossad and subsequently scapegoated onto American domestic terrorists. So obviously, if this happened on the evening of January 6th or the morning of January 7th of 2026, obviously know that it was planned and orchestrated by CIA headquarters located in Bern, LA, Geneva, and Switzerland, and executed on the ground via the Mossad. So if this happens, I would kindly ask you to download this video and share it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence officials, as well as with local, national, and international media outlets.